Beethoven's symphonies are one of the greatest achievement of classical music. Beethoven composed his first symphony at 30, quite late compared to Mozart, who dropped his first one at just 8. Between 1800 and 1824, he has completed 9 symphonies and even got started on a 10th, but we're not getting into that one. Almost all of them became a furor in music and made Beethoven one of the first musical superstars. While there are two well-distinguished groups where some are more well-known than others, it only makes things more interesting, especially if you didn't listen to some of them. Of course, Beethoven's symphonies are all outstanding, but there are clearly some greater than others. So, without further ado, let's rank all 9 of Beethoven's symphonies. Alright, let's begin with Beethoven's 8th Symphony, his Little Symphony in F, as he called it. Picture this, wedged between 3 consecutive symphonic masterpieces and the iconic 9th, where does the 8th fit? Honestly, it doesn't. Unlike other symphonies, this one is light and easygoing, more like late Mozart. It lacks Beethoven's nobility and intensity. He even kept the 3rd movement as a minuet, following classical traditions, which wasn't really in his style. But here's the thing, he did it on purpose, keeping it simple in both sound and structure. Finished in just 4 months with no dedication, it feels like Beethoven wrote it just for fun. Sure, the 8th may not have the power or grandeur of his other works. However, when Beethoven is having fun, there's always something worth hearing. The 4th is probably the most overlooked of all Beethoven's symphonies. He composed it during a tough time in his life, so the symphony is quite unpredictable and full of mood changes. It starts with a gloomy, dark opening. Not what you'd expect from a symphony in B-flat major. But then, the main theme kicks in, with Beethoven actively building it on contrasts and sudden mood shifts. Some say it was Beethoven's way of taking a musical breather, a lighter, more playful than his other symphonies. However, it played a key role in Beethoven's shift towards Romanticism. Beethoven's 2nd Symphony is where he truly starts breaking from tradition and developing his unique style. Here, he includes little details that later show up in bigger works, like a passage that reappears in the Waldstein Sonata, and even a theme from the 9th Symphony's 1st movement. The 2nd shows how Beethoven went through significant changes in both his musical views and life. While the finale may not be as powerful as the 1st movement, the symphony is still a big step forward. Beethoven's 1st Symphony was probably the most anticipated work from him. Completed in 1801, it was a great success for a young composer. It is the most classical of all his symphonies, following the classical traditions of Haydn and Mozart and adhering to a standard structure. However, in terms of its power and brilliance, this is where Beethoven begins to really show his unique style. Beethoven was slightly over 30 when he performed it, gaining him more fame as well as criticism from more conservative musicians. Some said it was too exaggerated and oddly balanced. For example, it starts on a dominant 7th chord, which was unusual for the time. This symphony is truly outstanding in terms of musical perfection, following the best traditions of late Mozart. However, Beethoven wouldn't be himself if he had simply followed his classical teachers. And now, we come to the 2nd group of symphonies, which includes some of the most well-known works. The 7th Symphony is truly exceptional in all aspects. It was quite a spontaneous work, so Beethoven was open to experimenting with it a lot. He wrote it while on a health-related vacation due to his hearing loss. Similarly to his Fifth Symphony, here he focuses on its rhythmic structures. For example, in the fourth movement, he repeats the rhythmic motif around 500 times. In terms of sound and musical complexity, the seventh is a breakthrough. In the Allegretto section, Beethoven develops such a simple idea into something astonishing and complex. This is probably the most debated of all his symphonies. Some say it is their all-time favorite because of its memorable themes and romantic spirit. Others, like Glenn Gould for example, called it the anticipation of disco music. However, it is one of the best starting points for Beethoven's music. Beethoven's Sixth Symphony, or Pastoral, is the most peaceful and lighthearted of his symphonies. It was performed in 1808, along with his Fifth Symphony. Originally, the Pastoral was marked as the Fifth Symphony on the program. However, they are completely opposite to each other. This unique five-movement symphony, sometimes referred to by Beethoven as fantastical symphony, is the finest example of so-called program music, which is written to evoke particular feelings and images, in this case, the beauty of nature. This is probably the most soothing and beautiful of Beethoven's symphonies, listening to which feels like a good dream. He even includes markings for his movements like Thunderstorm or By the Brook. Probably inspired by Vivaldi's Four Seasons. This may be the most groundbreaking work by Beethoven, where he introduces a new meaning to his music. Eroica is often referred to as the most important symphony in history, marking a turning point in music. Beethoven gave the symphony, and music in general, a new purpose, making it an expression of his philosophy and views. Written in 1804, it was initially dedicated to Napoleon. Beethoven saw him as a symbol of the fight for freedom and a new Europe, ruled by libertarians instead of aristocrats. However, when Napoleon declared himself emperor, Beethoven furiously tore his name from the score, renaming it simply Eroica. The symphony is significantly longer, more complex, epic, and innovative compared to his previous orchestral works. It can be seen as the story of an abstract hero. The first movement represents the hero's rise, the second, death and despair, and the finale, life and the fight for freedom. This was the moment when Beethoven went beyond composing mere music. He sought to create a deeper, more serious, and personal work that reflected his idealistic views on society and artistry. That's why Eroica changed the symphony forever, becoming one of the cornerstones of a new era in music. The fifth, also nicknamed the Fate Symphony, is one of the most famous pieces in music, becoming iconic from its first performance in 1808. This is a truly mesmerizing and forceful work that grabs your attention from its legendary opening to the very last note. Beethoven wrote it during a difficult period in his life when he realized he was starting to lose his hearing, alongside unfulfilled relationships and personal struggles. Some believe it is interconnected with the Eroica Symphony, in which Beethoven himself is the main protagonist. Famous musician Anton Schindler described the opening motif as fate knocking at your door. From its dramatic and brooding opening to the heroic finale, It represents the struggle between good and evil. Such powerful and fierce music had never been heard before Beethoven, and not much after him. The Ninth Symphony, Beethoven's lifelong work, like the Divine Comedy for Dante or Faust for Goethe, brings the greatest message to humanity. Millions should embrace each other. Undoubtedly, it is one of the most impactful and significant creations of art in history. The Ninth was used by both good and evil forces throughout history, as it was a powerful symbol that inspired millions. However, its main message still seems unheard by humanity. It was sent into space on the Voyager spacecraft as a recording of music. The CD format was designed to hold a 70-minute recording of the symphony, and its fourth movement became the anthem of the European Union. From a musical perspective, it is also groundbreaking and genius. The first half is dark and dramatic, reflecting Beethoven's struggles and despair. But in the glorious finale, he finally finds the joy that unites millions. By including the human voice in a symphony, Beethoven pushes the boundaries of music, stating that he has reached its peak, leaving only the human voice to speak. This is undoubtedly a must-hear masterpiece for everyone at least once in their life. Beethoven's longest, most powerful, and mesmerizing symphony.